Today, where every mainstream media is busy on Israel and Palestine, do you know there are some countries where hundreds of thousands of people are just dying and dying? Welcome to the History Plus, and we're talking about the conflicts of Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Tigray.
Today, in eastern Congo, nearly 3 million people have been displaced from their homes. Tens of thousands of women and girls have been raped by armed groups as well as soldiers in the Congolese army. Thousands of young boys and girls have been forcibly recruited to serve as fighters or sex slaves.
The conflict is much bigger, like in the Sudan, at least 13,000 to 15,000 people killed as of January 2024, with over 8.2 million people displaced since the conflict began in April 2023. In the Congo, the conflict and violence have worsened drastically, and as a result, over 6 million people have been displaced, and that makes it the worst displacement crisis in Africa. But in the Tigray, which is located in Ethiopia, the number became even worse. Over 300,000 to 600,000 people lost their lives, and it became one of the deadliest conflicts of the 21st century. So where in the conflict of Gaza and Israel, where over 37,000 people have died till yet, in the Tigray, almost 600,000 people have lost their lives, which is 16 times bigger than the Gaza and Israel war. However, it doesn't get any media attention, any support, or even many of us are unaware of this issue. But the question here is, why did the civil war in these countries start? And if it started then, why no one is talking about it? How does it impact our society? And as a history enthusiast, what do we learn from this war? Act 1, Sudan. So fam, let's start from the very beginning. Sudan had a very rough history because Sudan is home to numerous ethnic groups with different languages, religions, and cultures, but when Sudan's borders were created by colonial powers, they didn't consider the different ethnic and cultural groups living together, and that created a huge tension among each other inside the country. Along with its folks, there are significant economic inequalities between different regions, particularly between the wealthier north and the poorer south and west. The country also has valuable resources like oil, and different groups and regions want control for it. And similar to the other countries, it also faces political instability as gaining independence in 1956. Sudan has experienced numerous coups and periods of military rule. So because of the diverse population, economic disparities, conflicts on natural resources, and political instability, the tension among the different parties of the peoples have grown up, and Sudan has gone through 2 long civil wars, from 1955 to 1972, and from 1983 to 2005, mainly between the North and the South. These wars were mostly about how the country should be governed and who gets the resources. The Second War ended with South Sudan becoming its own country in 2011. In the early 2000s, there was a big fight in the Darfur area of Sudan. The government army was fighting against rebel groups. This fight caused many people to have to leave their homes and go somewhere else. There were also claims that genocide happened, which means one group was trying to destroy another group of people. In 2021, Sudan was trying to become a democracy after years of not having one. But then the military took over the government in a coup. This means the military forces violently took control away from the civilian leaders. When this happened, many people in Sudan protested and demanded that the regular civilian leaders should be put back in charge of the government, not the military. However, the military generals in charge after the coup responded very harshly and showed no mercy. They cracked down extremely hard on the protesters demanding democracy, using brutal force against the people. To really see how bad things are in Sudan, we have to look at the deep reasons it started. For many years, the government was not stable, which made tensions rise. Different ethnic groups mistrusted each other. Groups fought over valuable things like oil, water, and good land for growing food. It was like a perfect storm of problems inside the country that hurt many communities. Millions of people had to leave their homes and jobs because of the violence. They attacked us with tear gas and guns, everything they had, said Kaltham, a young person protesting for democracy. I saw friends, students, get shot just for speaking up. Her scared look and shaky voice show how terrifying it became for protesters in Sudan. But even though it was so scary, they never stopped trying to have their voices heard. The protesters stayed strong and determined, even when facing such extreme violence from the forces attacking them. The situation was very difficult and dangerous for those demanding change. Act 2, Democratic Republic of Congo. However, to understand the situation of Democratic Republic of Congo, we have to go back to 1960. When Congo got independence from Belgium, it went through many decades of having bad leaders who ruled in mean ways. There was a civil war in the country, and armies from other countries got involved too. This time period saw a lot of violence and nothing was stable. There were two major wars called the First and Second Congo Wars from 1996 to 1997 and 1998 to 2003. Many different rebel groups fought in these wars, along with armies from neighboring countries. These wars caused millions of people to die or have to leave their homes. Even after the Second Congo War officially ended in 2003, the violence kept going, especially in the eastern areas like North and South Kivu provinces. Rebel groups like the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda and M23 continued fighting against the Congo military and each other. And the reason? Why are they fighting? Well, it's likely to be the many different people groups did not like each other and were enemies. Groups fighting and arguing over who gets to control the valuable mineral resources in the ground. Other countries also wanted Congo's valuable natural resources like gold, diamonds, copper, and cobalt for themselves, so they got involved in the fighting and violence there too. Because of all these issues and outside groups wanting Congo's resources, the cycle of violence kept going and going in the country. Hence, the violent attacks happening, especially sexual violence against women and girls. It is extremely dangerous for aid groups to operate and provide help. The situation in eastern DRC is more than just dangerous. Over 7 million people had to flee their homes, and most are not getting enough assistance. The ongoing war has forced many to leave, caused food shortages, and severely impacted children's safety and well-being. An estimated 15.4 million children urgently need humanitarian aid. Children are experiencing violence, lack of health care, malnutrition, inability to attend school, and higher risks of being exploited or abused. The political situation remains tense, with rising violence from militant groups fighting over territory and natural resources, security forces killing people unlawfully, political violence, and increasing tensions with neighboring Rwanda. Companies from other countries fuel the conflict by seeking Congo's valuable raw materials like minerals, leading to wars with neighbors and supporting irresponsible leaders. Sadly, the media does not cover this crisis much, even though it is one of the most devastating of this century based on lives lost. Other global crises or powerful interests distract from showing Congo's dire situation. Act 3, Tigray, Ethiopia. However, the situation of Tigray is not very far from it. For many years, there were growing tensions between the Tigray region's forces and Ethiopia's government. But in late 2020, this tension finally erupted into full-scale war when the government launched a military attack to take control away from Tigray's leaders. After the fighting started, the conflict quickly got much worse. This led to extremely bad disasters caused by humans across the entire Tigray region. While the conflict started as a power struggle inside Ethiopia, outside forces like Eritrea's military got very involved in supporting Ethiopia's attack on Tigray. This raised worries that the fighting could spread and escalate across the whole region. The major global powers have mostly ignored the credible evidence showing large-scale atrocities happening in Tigray. The huge humanitarian emergency and desperate calls for help continue to be largely unanswered by the world. Common threads and global impact. The crisis in Sudan, Congo, and Tigray may seem different, but they have a lot in common. Ethnic tensions, fights over land and water, and power struggles are big problems in all three places. Climate change makes these issues worse by reducing good farmland and increasing competition for resources. These problems are connected and can make the whole region unstable if we don't do something. Violence and desperation cause more conflicts and force people to flee to nearby countries. This strains resources and increases tensions, creating opportunities for extremist groups and illegal activities. Despite these challenges, there is hope. In Sudan, people are still fighting for democracy. In Congo, survivors are standing up against sexual violence. In Tigray, humanitarian workers risk their lives to help the starving. These efforts show human resilience and the need to end the suffering. What we learn from this whole case study, the whole story of Sudan, Congo, and Tigray teaches us about how just the small things like political instability, conflicts on natural resources, and small tension between the two parties create such a big impact in the society. Now, the situation is worse. People are dying, but there are popular quote by Edmund Burke. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. We can't just sit along with it and let things happen. We have to take a stand and let the people know of what's really going on outside the country beyond that of Israel and Palestine. If you really care about humanity, then take a stand against it. Share this video as much as possible and create awareness about it. Now that's for today's